So we are wrapping up our series on Ready for Resurrection. And this is the first, so I've done similar types of series several times before. And like I said, I actually brought in some people who have greater knowledge than I do for some of the sessions, which I think was a great addition. And I was also just informed earlier this week that I guess when I looked away from the screen a couple Wednesdays ago, my brother made some sort of faces or something. Somebody said something about how he pointed up here where he's got more hair or something, but it's, you know, he keeps it kind of long to cover it up, and there's the, you know, it's kind of retreating right there.
It's the heat from your brain. It's the heat from your brain.
That's right. That's right.
It covers his horns.
So that's right. So, but this is a new. What we're gonna look at today is new. I have not done this before, so you know, I want to throw this out here and kind of see what works and go from there. So I want to talk about leaving a legacy. How do we become a blessing to the people who come after us? So let me start our paper going around here. And there we go.
There you go. Oh.
So I try not to do this sort of thing too often, but I came across this. It was just too helpful to overlook. I try not to start with a definition of things too often, but the word legacy actually comes from the Latin word legatus, which is an ambassador. An ambassador is somebody you send somewhere else to represent you. So in a sense, when we think about our legacy, what is going to represent us to the people who come after us? And I just thought that was an interesting insight, just a different way to think about what are we doing with this? It is, you know, what are people going to look back on us and see or think or say? And that is, you know, each of us as individuals. But I often think, you know, what are my grandchildren going to, you know, I'll be saying something and, you know, something as simple as I'll be talking to them and my grandchildren will go, "Grandpa, you can't say that anymore." I'll be thinking, that was perfectly acceptable in 2020. Why is that a problem? As they're wearing their pajama pants. But you know, it could be things as simple as that. It could be things like, what is the legacy left to us by people of the World War II generation? You know, so what is going to represent us in the future? And so last week we did touch on some of those scriptural examples. And I'm sure I will do this series again years down the road. So I just moved those here because I thought they fit better. But again, in Genesis, Jacob stops and he talks about each of his 12 descendants. And he has something particular to say about each of them. He leaves specific instructions for his burial. You know, yeah, I get it that you're going to bury me in Egypt because that's where we are, but God promised that this is not home. And when you leave to go to the promised land, you need to take me with you. So I think, again, that's a very early example of kind of shaping how we want to be remembered. You know, he wants to be remembered by kind of offering a vision of each of his descendants. Jesus does the same thing. John 13:31-35. I give you a new commandment, love one another as I have loved you. This is the way people will know that you are my disciples. He is, and that whole long section there, those 4 or 5 chapters, Jesus is summarizing his teachings. He is highlighting, these are the values I want to make sure that you continue to live by and pass on. This is how everyone else will know that you are my people, if you have this kind of lifestyle. So this idea of leaving a legacy often, or I should say sometimes, is collapsed down to, well, I want to leave a legacy. I want to make sure I've got some money left to leave to blank. And that's fantastic. If Tom was here, I would mention that, I don't expect a whole lot of that from the baby boomers, the scorched earth generation, but in past generations, people would leave something behind. But there's a lot of other ways we can do that are of wonderful value and blessing to folks. And I have it broken into 2 broad categories. What, we can think about our legacy to future generations of our people, family, your chosen family. You've got those people who are like family, even if you don't share any genetic material. Communities, a congregation, maybe there's a professional group, charitable organization, a school. So that is one venue where we can leave a legacy. And then, of course, and we'll look over these in a little more detail, you can make a legacy to humanity in a sense. And it may be, something that really reshapes the future of humankind. It could be something that you say, you know what, I'm going to do blank because I'm going to leave this community, because I'm going to leave this whatever a little better than I found it. And it may not be written down in any history book, but you will know that you've done something that leaves that legacy. So let me stop there. Questions, comments, concerns, insights? Like I said, this is uncharted territory. So I'm learning as I go here, along with everybody else. When you think about leaving a legacy, this is your opportunity to tell people who you are or how you see yourself, which most of you have probably discovered at some point in your life, that sometimes the way you see yourself and the way others see you could diverge at a certain point. We hope that is not the case, but it does happen. But this is the opportunity for you to say, this is how I have seen myself. This is who I understand that God has made me. And I just started, I had a couple of resources that I drew on when I was putting this together. And some of the things that kept coming up were values, life lessons, who you are and where you've come from. So the first one, what are your values? It is a really broad question. I mean, it is, yeah. So just to get the ball rolling, just to hopefully assist in that, I'm going to pass these around. And on one side of the sheet that's coming around, it is a list of common personal core values, because sometimes it just helps to have something to kind of prime the pump. And you may look at the list and go, yeah, there's 3 or 4 of these that really speak to me. Or you may go, I kind of feel like adventure is one of my values, but maybe the better word for it is exploration or whatever. But to think a little bit about, what are the traits that really matter to you, that other people might see, and that you hope your people would, that they would matter to them. So you've got, you know, a list there to start with, and of course, this list came from the internet, and all of you are as capable of using Google or whichever tool you want to use as I am. But, you know, just to get it started, because it's a little bit of an amorphous topic. So just having some particular choices there could be helpful.
You know, Pastor, in my book, I did that.
Fantastic.
At the end of my little thing, I said that the most important things in my life were,
Right.
you know, family and travel and gardening and, you know, that. So I did. How about that?
My grandfather wrote a little thing about just what he thought life was about.
Mhm.
And I had a copy of it in my kitchen I mean, I'm sure I put it away somewhere. I hope I put it somewhere safe, but. for about
You
a
put it
year-
somewhere you knew you'd never forget
I
it.
was so smart, in fact, that even I will never find it.
Exactly. It's that safe.
But I had it there in my kitchen, where I grabbed my recipes from, so I could read that, during the year after he passed away. And I just treasured that he took the time to write that down.
Mhm.
It really meant a lot.
And yeah, when we flip the sheet over, we're going to touch on what are some ways we can communicate these things to other people. But in addition to maybe trying to articulate, you know, here are a couple of values that really mean something to me. Maybe something else to think about is, in what ways have these values shaped my choices? If one of my values is stability, and I just see that one on the list. You could, you know, in some way, shape, or form, tell the people who are coming after you, you know what, I really value stability for myself, for my family, and that is the reason I never pursued this other job opportunity. And people have wondered, oh, why didn't you go for this, go for that? You know, because it was more important for me to have that stability. But to be able to share with people, this is some insight into how I came to some of the decisions that I came to. So, you know, like, for example, my grandmother, you know, I asked her, you know, why did your parents decide to move to the United States? And I'd heard from other people in the family that it was a religious thing, because her parents were Pentecostal. Who knew there were Pentecostals in Sweden? There were at least two. So, pardon?
It's hard to picture.
Yes, I know. I'd love to see the Swedes throwing their hands up and speaking in tongues. And you know, I said, you know, why did your family come over here? And she goes, there was no work. She goes, it's that simple. Like, there was no work. That's why they came to the decision they came to. And as I've shared with people before, why did they come over in the way they did? Well, because great grandpa came over here first and was working for a while, and he was fine with great grandma bringing the children over by herself because she spoke English. So, you know, why did you come to some of the decisions you came to? And kind of a parallel question and some overlap. How have you tried to embody your values? If one of your values is friendships, you might say, you know, I've made a point of every week, I've called one of my friends just to say, hey, how you doing? I want to keep communicating with people. So I think being able to point to some ways that you have kind of put flesh and bone on those values would be something that will be very valuable for the people who come after you. me pause there. Questions, insights?
Well, some of the things you're doing now, I mean, should influence your family, I would think. For example, giving to the church or whatever charitable organizations you give to.
Mhm.
So you're sort of setting your example while you're still alive.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I was thinking taking some time to write these things down is a good opportunity to sort of evaluate, like, these are my spoken values, compare an average day in my life to what I say my values are, or feel my values are, how well am I doing at living my values?
Right.
So that when I write these things down, people can say, yeah, you know. that's-
Yeah, or, you
People say,
know,
oh, service is really important to me, but no one, your children never saw you
Right.
volunteer a day in your life.
generosity is really important to me, and
Right.
people go, you are the cheapest person I know. What are you talking about? So,
Generous to yourself.
yeah. So yeah, values and the extent to which we can kind of put flesh and bone on that. And again, the hope is that you're already doing some things, but that you can actually just point to it and name. You know, I always put something in the offering plate at church because some of my values include religion and generosity. And people may see you do that, but just to tie it to, this is what points me in that direction. Other things you can plan to tell people about who you are. What are the life lessons that you've learned along the way? You think about the acquired wisdom that people get over a lifetime, some more than others. What are those lessons? If you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, what would you try to teach yourself? And for people who have children, sometimes it's very easy to see a younger version of yourself, and sometimes you go,
I get it now.
don't you don't need to make every single one of the same mistakes I've made.
But they do.
I love that sums it up.
Mhm.
Years ago, my oldest daughter got us these presents for Christmas. I thought, oh, this is horrible. But it was where you would get a question every 2 weeks or so, and you'd write out something about your past or your feelings on different topics. And we did that and made 2 books. One she did and I did, and I included pictures from when I was younger and my elementary school class at a certain
So it wasn't as bad as you thought it was gonna be.
No, I actually once I got
going.
it was good. And they each had a book, my daughters,
What we wrote, yeah.
Is
so
it
they know
a
about our
company?
past,
Yeah.
our youth and things, and how we got together.
What was the company called?
I got this from my retired, but it's just really cool. So I have started to do, but it's like, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, but there's just various questions and then how you answer them, and then you have it for your grandchild.
And the book is called Tell Me Your Life Story, Grandma.
Yeah.
A
and I'm-
grandmother's guided journal and memory keepsake book.
Like I said, my daughter keeps asking me to do that.
questionsaboutme.com. So
Okay.
There's probably other ones, for grandparents and mothers and whatever. I thought it was kind of cool. So.
And, likely this would come up as you think about life lessons, moments where you felt like, something really clicked for me, or I really grew in that moment. What were the events and circumstances that kind of pushed you in that direction, that kind of pushed you to grow or learn that? Was it just curiosity? Was it, kind of desperation is the mother of invention, that sort of thing? But what was it in your life that helped you learn these lessons? Those are good things to pass along as well. And again, I think those of us who are parents, I am starting to see that I can try to pass these things along all I want, but there are certain things we all just gotta Learn for ourselves.
Proverbs
Yeah.
says, teach your children ways, and when they are older, they will follow.
Mm,
Yes.
fair enough. The wisdom just continues to pour forth.
I worked near in proximity to one of the oldest sisters in the Franciscan for a little while, and I was blessed to chat with her, visit with her. She had a very interesting life.
Mhm.
That she was from an old German family, as most of them are, and it was when my kids were little, and I talked to her a lot about my kids, and she said, make sure that before you go, your kids know what made you tick.
Mhm.
She said, my mom died and I didn't know a single thing about her.
Mhm.
And I regret that every day. I don't know what made her tick. I don't know why she did the things she did. And she said, make sure your kids know what makes you tick. I'll never forget that. And since she was a nun, it was practically a mandate from God.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And don't you forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice way of summing it up, what makes you tick? And another thing that you can pass along that helps tell people who you are. Where have you and your people come from? Who were the people that had a significant influence on you? Was there a particular family member? Was there a mentor of some kind? Who were the people who kind of helped you become the person that you are? I think we usually think about that in positive terms. Of course, there are people who are bad influences. Sometimes it's worth it to stop and think about that. How have the various places in your life shaped you? If you grew up in rural Alabama, you probably have been shaped in some different ways than somebody who grew up in suburban Chicago. If you grew up in another country, that's going to just add another layer. And in what ways did each of those places kind of help shape who you are? And kind of the culture and society. What did that have to say about you? How did that shape you? And there's all sorts of different directions you could go with this. But I was trying to think of just an example, and I thought this would fly in this group. Compared to the 2020s, what was it like to grow up as a woman in the 1950s and the 1960s? Maybe some expectations were different. Maybe some opportunities were different. And maybe that shaped kind of where you went and what you did. And of course, the permutations of that are endless. So yeah, kind of some of those things. People, places, what's going on with the society. And of course, that shifts and changes throughout your life. The people in your life change, the places you live in change, the culture and the society change. But thinking about all of those things that shape you and make you who you are, can you take some time, sit back and name or articulate those things for the people who come after you? Which brings us to the other side of the sheet. And, this is as I say, with many of our things in this series, this is a starting point. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just meant to help get you thinking about stuff. What are some ideas about how we can pass these things down? I know for me, something that I have really come to value as I have gotten older is that my grandmothers both lived. I became of an age where I was interested in asking them about their lives. So obviously a lot of these things, I think we often pass on very informally or just kind of by chance. But maybe in addition to that, maybe we want to be a little more intentional about it. And we touched on this last week, the idea of an ethical will, a document capturing one's essence, which I thought was kind of slick, through the recollection of meaningful experiences, key family history, values, life lessons, and hopes and wishes for future generations. You could sit down and write these things out. And one of the things that, again, they suggested was this Christian preamble to a will. So you could actually include this in some of those legal documents we had before. And there is an example of that on the backside of your values list. And again, this is one of the things that you can copy wholesale, or you can adapt to meet your needs. And the next suggestion on the list comes directly from Barbara. A scrapbook or photo album with captions telling who the people are and parts of their stories. Are you okay with us passing the books around?
Sure.
So yeah, you could.
So what I did was I brought the one that I had made for my daughter and myself just to show that the first 20 pages in everybody's book is the same. I mean, we all got the same grandparents and great. And then after that, then I individualized for
That's
the,
really a good idea.
it took me a long time.
You're making me think, what did I do during the pandemic?
But, so the first part, I went through the history of each, like my grandmother and my grandfather and my other grandparents and my dad and mom and me and my ex and, cause my kids, and then the two kids, I put in like a section of their dad and his family. I had gotten a hold of him and he gave me some, pictures of his great grandparents and stuff. So, and I labeled, I would label who it was and, pictures of Beck and Harvey and my friends and.
Did you do that like on, I forget the name of it,
Shutterfly.
Shutterfly? Okay.
Yeah, so
you're gonna upload
I
and
saved
lets
it
you
and
put
then
words? It lets you put words
Oh.
and captions.
Do they
and
have a
all that?
template? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
or-
that's what I
No,
mean.
you just did it. Okay, yeah.
I've done a lot of books.
Oh,
So
okay.
I have gotten, I mean, you can do it where it's just plain, so you can just write on them.
Mhm.
And then you can choose your arrangement of pictures and then you just add in, add a text and
Oh,
put it
okay.
underneath it. and
She
then
has
write
a book from all of her travels,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of books.
Nice.
And they were hard to pack. Heavy to pack.
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Super cool.
How long did it take you
My
to make
kids would
one?
really like that.
One
Wow,
book,
that's
it depended on the book.
That's why we
Mine,
never
it
make
probably
such
took
old
me about
pictures in boxes.
7-8 months, because I would pull out pictures that I just had snapshots of. I mean, obviously, they didn't have digital back in the day. So I'd have to take the pictures of them and then I load it onto my computer, then I loaded onto
Yeah, the
Shutterfly.
website.
It was, it was a big project, but I'm more picture than just talking,
Mhm.
and I just thought, someday the kids will really
Oh, for sure.
appreciate it,
And I.
and, and
That's what I've
I
done with
did one for
Sam,
my
too.
sister too, so.
Yeah,
My
I'm trying to
mom
understand the
has-
same thing. It's like she needs to talk to her grandparents and
Mhm.
learn about them, have conversations, not just, hi grandma.
Yeah,
My mother also, who recently passed away, she had started in the last couple of years because my mother saved absolutely everything. So we had things from my great grandmother, my grandmother, everybody, and on every side of the family. And she started just labeling everything and putting notes in everything, whose it was,
Yes.
what it was from.
That's-
So that was interesting.
Yeah, and I had a friend who had all of her mother's photos, and I just remember she agonized because she said, I have no idea who
That's
any of these
absolutely
people are.
Yeah, my mom wrote
Yeah.
on the back of
Yeah,
all of
who
them.
they are, so they
Yeah.
mean nothing to me, but they were important enough for my mother to schlep around her whole life.
Yeah.
Here we are. There's
Also,
Gail.
we have video
There's Gail.
in the current day
There's
and
Gail.
age.
Yeah, we were.
And I even enjoy looking at, you could look at that all day and then some. I love even seeing the clothes, the dresses that the women wear. Like, one of them, a woman had a beautiful red hat.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful.
You'll give the kids a kick.
What
What did you wear that for?
When I think about that sometime, I have, you know, my sermons and binders by year, and I think about one day my children will get these binders and they'll look at each other and go, yeah, I don't want that. Are you?
They will fill out one of my photo albums and pictures. and stuff.
That is why I brought up digital,
Mhm.
because they can't say they don't have room for an external hard drive that's the size of a wallet,
Right.
you know, like. So that you can do that too, you know, and save those things digitally. You Just gotta label it, make sure everybody knows that's what it is and that it's family history.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling they're just gonna keep getting more mobile and not wanna pack
I
stuff and
know.
carry it with them.
Yeah.
So obviously, an actual physical book would be a great opportunity, and again, it kind of gives you the opportunity to take stock and look back and
Yeah.
It
think about
really
these
made
things.
the pandemic really go. You know, I was reliving everything. I was reliving my childhood. I can remember what my grandmother said and, you know, and you know, in my life, you know, and everybody's life. So it really did help, but it was a lot of, I'm over at my daughter's taking pictures of her. She's got a lot of pictures on the wall. Taking pictures, you know. But,
Now, here's a suggestion too, and this just helped me, and it was just in the nick of time. My family being Croatian, my mom's family, there were many correspondence my grandmother had. She came to the country when she was 18 years old, married my grandpa, and they were here. She left behind her mom, her sister, and never saw them again. So there was a lot of correspondence, all written with pictures in Croatian. Luckily enough, my girlfriend once said to me, you know, my mom, she goes, I can speak Croatian, but I can't read it as fluently as my mom could do. And we sat down with her mom for a long time during, again, the pandemic. I'd go to the house, and whenever it was good for her mom to do it, and we'd be doing shorthand or, you know, just notating what mom would. And then I went back and I put everything with all those notes. The very next week, her mom went into dementia and she wouldn't have been able to help us at all. So that's another thing. If anyone has anything in their language that they cannot interpret themselves, find someone. Because it changed my life. It changed my life.
Is this her daughter's wedding? Or is this
Yeah.
this one's my daughter's.
And so how many people here have someone in their family who's big into genealogy and or you yourself are big into genealogy?
Yeah.
So some
We
of us
talked
do.
about that. So my cousin did this book through Ancestry, but he did, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But he put a lot of effort into it, and there's just everything, and it starts out in 18 something. It goes back, I mean, it talks from like people that like from, was born 1805. You know, where they came from, you know, we have Irish and Scottish, so there's just everything. I mean, it's just really cool. And I jumped on Ancestry, so I was able to start working on stuff for myself. And a lot of it's out there already because Bobby did everything, you know, different things. But it's super cool. I mean, if you wanna just look at that, but.
My
So that
mom
was
had
one.
always told us that her brother, who we knew died in World War II, was shot down after their German mission that they did. that there's something in a cemetery in France, and they didn't know exactly what it was, but they said there's American cemeteries there. And again, with this ancestry.com, there was a television show that I remember it was Matthew Broderick, and he was on, and they were talking about his uncle who died in war. And I right away just started putting in my uncle's name. And the cemetery in France sent me all the information. They took pictures of where my uncle is buried. And you know, it just fulfilled me, because my mom was already gone, and I wish I could have done that when she was alive. Oh, this is so cool.
And so, of course, there's lots of different things you can do that fall under that idea of genealogy. There's, you know, the basic family tree, great grandma and great grandpa, you know, and it splits off. People do that. And yeah, if you have somebody in your family who's into that sort of thing, you know, reach out to that cousin or whomever and say, hey, can you send me a copy? Because it beats having to start from scratch. And then there are, you know, kind of other things you can do. So like Kim brought in the book, and it's not just the dates, you know, person was born here, died there. There's other information in there. So you can kind of, you could make an annotated family tree. There is also I learned about this in seminary. You could also make a genogram, which is different than a family tree, because a genogram is also supposed to track traits or characteristics or that sort of thing. So there's all sorts of additional symbols other than, you know, circle is a man, triangle is a woman, or whatever the thing is. But, you know, squiggly line between the husband and wife means they were married, but they were always at each other's throats. You know, break in line between parents and child means, you know, they stop talking to each other. And so you can find out how to do these things, and it can kind of reveal to you and to the people you share it with, you know, well, gosh, you know, you ever wondered why we never heard from Uncle Mike? Well, Uncle Mike had a big blow up with, Uncle Mike was a jerk. Like we're happy we didn't have to hear from him. But, you know, the reason they stopped talking to him was, you know, he stopped talking to mom and dad after, you know, the incident or whatever. And you always know it's bad when people say incident. I feel like that word is reserved for extra bad stuff. So again, that's another way you can kind of trace back, you know, not just, hey, these are the dates and maybe the place, but, you know, this is kind of like, this is a little bit about who the person was and how they related to the rest of their family. Well, gosh, it shouldn't be a surprise then that, you know, we sit around the dinner table in silence, because, you know, that's just kind of how our people are, or whatever. You can also, on that sort of thing, put, you know, medical information on there. That could be very useful to your children. Like, yeah, you know, great grandpa died of a heart attack. Grandpa died of a heart attack. Dad died of a heart attack.
You might want to.
So go and get your cholesterol checked and, you know, and quit smoking. So, you know, things like that are helpful. I do know we have on my mom's side, her cousin was huge into genealogy, and then her son took that over, and he has found some family members. He's traced them all the way back to when the records begin. So that a lot of those are like the church records, the baptism. So he's traced it back to like 1200, because before that, the Vikings and the Old Norse didn't keep the same kind of records. And on my dad's side, my aunt is really big into genealogy. So I've got those people who keep doing that. And I think it was ancestry.com has periodically contacted me and said, we found one of your relatives. And I think one of the relatives they found was my dad. Like, okay, well, good. That's right on.
The same one you knew, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I got to.
Mhm.
Pastor, can I just, if anybody would be interested in doing, it, I'd be more than happy to help you start with Shutterfly and just explain how to. You know, like I said, I've been doing it for probably since 2011, so I really have it kind of down pat, so.
Thanks.
If anybody would want help starting, I'm
Down.
not gonna take all your pictures for you, but I will show you how to get them onto Shutterfly and create a book and stuff.
So a couple other things I'll just touch on briefly in the interest of time. This would speak to some of us more than others. You know, maybe a collection of some family recipes, and you can add on there, you know, like this was grandma's favorite recipe for blank, and she got it from this magazine in 1934. You know, and sometimes you think, oh, you know, this was passed down from generation to generation. And then you open up mom's recipe book and there's a yellow tattered clipping out of the Chicago Tribune from 1979. Oh, I guess my ancestors were not making this in the old country. Okay, well, either way, now you know. One of the suggestions was if you like to do things with your hands, create something to pass on as a family heirloom. Maybe it's a quilt, maybe it's something carved out of wood, maybe it's ceramic. Whatever the case may be, you can create something and, you know, kind of accompany it with the story of why you made it and so on, and have that tangible thing to pass on. One of the suggestions was make a playlist of songs that mean something to you. People who love music could always.
Mixtape, like we used to do.
That's where I
Right.
started.
So,
Oh, yeah.
God is great, beer is good, people are crazy.
so yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. I want to show just 3 or 4 pictures here. So I'm going to attempt to do the screen share. So, like I said, I'm going to ask the computer to do more than one thing at once, so let's all exercise patience.
Well, if it's a female computer, no problem. We do it all the time.
She sent me like a little plaque.
Here we go.
Oh, cool. Oh.
Recipe.
I was just watching Coco the other day.
So eventually, what you're going to see, maybe. Okay, so most years in October, we set up a Day of the Dead ofrenda. Actually, this does count as an altar. An ofrenda is any kind of setup that you do for this. You can only call it an altar if you have more than one level. Because that makes it higher. I am not making this up. And one of the things that this one is from a few years ago, because we've had to add more people to it. But we've got pictures of some people, and we actually have stuff that stands for each of the people, and you know, some of them do double duty. And we set this up as a family, and as we take each thing out, or as we go find each thing that we're going to add to the altar, you know, we tell the boys, the reason we have this on the altar is because of blank.
How do you explain the beer?
Well,
Oh,
here,
they
we'll-
like beer.
so these are Andrea's mom's parents. These are my mom's parents. This was my neighbor, Ed, growing up. These are my dad's parents.
So it doesn't have to be family, it can just be.
Yep, and these are
Family as well.
Andrea's dad's parents. And I have a pair of Grandpa Carl's cufflinks.
Wow.
And, you know, they are, they have the logo for the Operating Engineers Union. And I have some US Steel cufflinks that were Grandpa Roberts.
My grandpa's a Carl, is yours the K though?
It was with a K, and when he got here, the Ellis Island folks decided that that was not necessary, so they changed it to a C.
Okay.
And so we have different things. My grandfather worked for the railroad for a while. Andrea's grandfather worked for the railroad. My grandfather was an operating engineer. My grandmother had a grapefruit tree in her backyard in Florida. Andrea's grandmother gave us this icon. Andrea's grandfather worked at Wrigley Field. And I also remember my dad's father was a prodigious consumer of old style. Andrea's grandfather, my grandfather, and Ed all served in the Army. Al Dexter, Pistol Packin' Mama, that was Ed's favorite tune from the World War II era.
Looks like the guy from Go-Go.
And yep, Andrea's family, hardcore Cubs people. Andrea's grandma had a tangerine tree in her yard. This is just a traditional bread that they bake for it. And Andrea's, so the Glug cup also serves double duty because my grandparents would always make Glug. And then when my parents started making it, they got some from my grandparents. And then when we started making it, I got some from my parents. So it goes back to grandma and grandpa. But Andrea's grandmother, her Italian grandmother worked at, of all places, the Swedish Club in Chicago. So, pardon?
I used to go there.
See, so it, you know, some of the objects serve double duty, but again, this is a way we pass that along to the children.
So you get this out once a year for Day of the Dead? It's not-
Yes.
Or do you leave it out all the time?
No,
Oh, okay.
we do not leave it out all the time. So, and again, that's just an example, and you could do a similar type of thing without saying this is for Day of the Dead, but that's just
But
an
that is one
example.
thing I've noticed, it's like traditions or generational things have kind of gone away. You know, it's like some people just don't have those cultural things that
Yeah.
other
We
countries
always had the
still
exact
have.
same meal
Yeah.
for Christmas and for,
Yeah,
you know, Thanksgiving,
Right.
not anymore, you know.
that's
It's
true.
like, well, what do you want? Pizza, you know.
Yeah.
So, just for a couple minutes, we're gonna turn to thoughts about how do we leave a legacy to a wider group of people? And the questions that can start us thinking about that. What could we act on today in order to positively reshape the future in some way? And that is purposely left very wide open, because different things are going to speak to different ones among us, or in this book titled The Good Ancestor, they ask the question, what can we do to pass on a world that is fit for the flourishing of life?
Wow.
And again, that is very wide open, purposely. The other thought is, you know, you don't just leave a legacy. You don't just write down, yep, this is what I want you to remember. This is what I want you to do. You build that throughout your life. A lot of it is how people come to experience you. So you think about that. And these are just ideas, just things to start getting the juices flowing. You know, how do we leave a legacy that will that will in a good way impact people who come after you? obviously your pastor is going to say, share your faith. What are the ways that you have loved your neighbor? Loving our neighbor can pass on a world that is at least a little more flourishing for life. Maybe sometimes we need to stop and think about, this is a way I realized I had failed to love my neighbor. Sometimes an example of what not to do is really valuable. I think of one of the churches they sent me to while I was in seminary, and myself and the other seminarian who went there, we both agreed. There were some things we saw there and we're like, yep, we have seen how not to do this. And that's worth something. Within your lifetime, support an organization that improves some aspect of other people's lives. And, you can volunteer, you can donate, you can share the word. We talked last week, you can leave a gift to the organization. And again, it's very wide open. Maybe your thing is Doctors Without Borders. Maybe your thing is the Sierra Club. Maybe your thing is hospice. Maybe your thing is
Donating blood.
Donating blood, for sure. But again, something that is going to improve life for people. You can always mentor a younger person, somebody who could be blessed by your life experience. It doesn't have to be a real super formal thing that's set up through an official mentoring program, but maybe you just know somebody who you periodically meet with them for lunch or what have you. Or their $10 cups of coffee, and their avocado toast with the damn millennials. And that's what
In their pajama pants.
in their pajama pants, and they come out from their parents' basements. Because they can't afford a house because they're buying their $10 coffee and their avocado toast.
That's why I have a bed in my basement.
And their $2,000. No, mom and dad buy that for you. Come on, let's be honest.
No, that mom and dad's plan.
Anyway, so someone like that, for example, could benefit from your wisdom. And maybe to say, why don't you come over to my house and I'll brew you a cup of coffee that tastes good and it'll set you back a dime. Just saying. Anyway, commit to a practice that is going to preserve or improve the environment in some way. And then tell people, you tell your children, you know what? We're going to do meatless Mondays. Because I saw that documentary on Netflix talking about, that cattle are like the equivalent of 7 billion cars on, with their carbon, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's just, you know what? Every year I'm going to plant a tree. And you tell people every year I'm going to plant a tree because trees give animals a place to live. Trees, help clean the air, whatever it is, but not only to cultivate some kind of practice, but to tell people that you're doing this. Commit to a practice that will preserve or improve society in some way and tell people, this is why I'm committing to the practice. I used to only vote in presidential elections, but you know what? I vote every single opportunity I have, because I am trying to put people in office who will do good things. I make a point of talking to my neighbors, because people talk about, nobody knows their neighbors anymore. Well, I decided that's at least going to change on my block. And they could be very small things. Not every one of us is going to be and I have this name in my mind because it was in this book, The Good Ancestor. Not every one of us is going to be Jonas Salk, which again, I think to many people in this room that brings back some memories. Not all of us are going to leave a legacy that is quite that far reaching, but all of us have the ability to do something that will bless generations after us. That's what I have for you. So let me just sit back and open it up for
Wasn't it Shakespeare?
conversation.
I wanted,
Shakespeare who said every third thought should be for the grave.
The grade.
I do not know. It very well could have been.
Meaning, it's good to think about how you want to be remembered when you're done. Good to think about the
Mhm.
fact that there's 100% mortality, all these things that we've talked about in your day-to-day life.
I wanted to thank you for the wonderful visual image of my Swedish in-laws as Pentecostals.
Yeah, like I said, who knew?
I just heard repeated on TV again this morning about when you were talking about the $10 cups of coffee and that kind of stuff, about starting your kids very early in regards to like 3 jars. So, you know, so that they.
Same give.
You know, start that early on.
Right.
Thank you.
I agree. I think it's interesting that we don't always know what our future generations are going to remember us by. I was just reminded of that the other day when I was with my daughter Mary and her daughter Avia, who was here a couple weeks ago. And Mary said something, I don't remember exactly what it was, it doesn't matter, but she said, "Oh my gosh, I sound like grandma with my mom." And we all 3 of us laughed. And then I said to Avia, "That's gonna be you someday, you know, because my daughter's always telling me, oh, you sound like grandma Alva." So now the next generation is doing the same thing, saying the similar thing with the same inflection maybe. And maybe that'll be passed down for who knows how long. It's just, and my mother-in-law had a lot of sayings that
I would like this.
she didn't realize they were really sayings, but we remember her by, you know, bringing those things up again. And so we don't always know what they're gonna remember, but you should kind of be mindful of it, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, I can think of a couple of verbal, a couple of phrases that I hear my father-in-law, Andrea, and Victor, and they all say it exactly the same way. I'm just like, they're 3 peas in a pod.
One thing that we did that I feel was partially to help our children understand you have to reach outside yourself, as we did infant foster care for 30 years.
Hmm.
And that very fulfilling, and like I said, I think it taught our girls a lot.
And did you write all that, some of your experiences down?
Oh, I have books of all the babies.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Some of them I still follow on Facebook, so that's pretty cool.
Oh. So it goes passed down, passed down.
Other thoughts? Other,
You said it was unfamiliar territory, but that was a really good list of ideas.
well, thank you.
Because, you know,
Thank Google.
I used my resources.
I know from my family, you forget that, you know, dementia happens and people might still be with you, but all the stories are gone.
Yeah.
Or it's funny, like my dad had dementia, but he, like I follow a Chicago Heights Facebook page, and so I would tell him about stuff on there. He would remember it perfectly. He did, oh, Klein's was the first, you know, standalone store, blah, blah. And then I'd look it up and sure enough, he was right. But now I have a friend who has dementia and she doesn't remember anything.
Yeah,
She doesn't remember her childhood or
Sometimes
anything.
they go, you know, my dad had it.
Some days, yeah.
Every time my sister and I would take turns going down to Florida to visit, and I'd be like, okay, what decade are we in, you know, for a while, you know, then he was gonna be picking up, he'd tell Kathy, I'm gonna pick you up on the corner after your party, you know, and then I was mom for a while, and it just kept going further back. Finally got to the point where we didn't know any of the people he was talking about, because it was Army and,
Yeah. Wow.
you know.
Yeah.
My great grandmother,
It's
they
just
had a
weird how
picture
they're so
of her
different.
Mhm.
confirmation class from, 1960.
Because at the end I'd say.
She could name every kid in that confirmation, but she had no idea who he was. But she
Yeah.
could name every person in that picture.
Crazy.
Remarkable, 96 years old. Well, at least I always think that must be comforting.
Wedding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But they have something.
Mhm.
Certainly too, where, like, they can sing a hymn, but
Mhm.
they don't know who you are.
And actually, it's a good time to get some of those stories because it's almost like it's unlocked,
Mhm.
Well, I have notes of my dad's crazy stories, about, did you see the clown or the bus outside? There was a bunch of clowns that came
It's
through
probably
here. And I'm like,
memory from somewhere.
really? I said, they must, he's like, I don't know how you missed it. I said, I didn't see it. He didn't
It was-
believe me. I
it
said,
was-
I came in a different entrance, Dad. It might have been parked at the other entrance.
It was just a school bus and they looked like clowns because they were wearing pajama pants.
And they had orange hair.
That's right.
And he would talk about how it
So-
was like something kind of thing and he's hosing stuff down. I'm like,
So just a couple of housekeeping type things. Yes, we do have some calendars and we have some Lent study materials or Lent devotionals. So please avail yourselves of those. We do have regular and large print. And then we will not be gathering next Wednesday because next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, worship at noon and at 7 p.m. And then we will be back together the week after that in the morning to start our series for Lent on the small catechism. So just wanted to throw that out there for folks. And why don't we conclude our time this morning praying the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, thank you, everyone. Blessings on your Wednesday.
You as well, feel better.